What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Chaos. My name is Brad. That is Fat Man Zoom. The stock market's crazy and chaotic, and we made it our mission to help you guys own it. And Fat Man Zoom, we got a great topic today. Hit them up with what we're going on.
We're going to be discussing the top stocks for November. So Brad's going to bring his top 5 stocks for November. If you guys haven't seen this, make sure you stick around. We'll break down fundamentals, technicals, and we'll also discuss general overall market sentiment. But first, I got to say, man, kudos to you. Top stocks for October, you were 5 for 5. And special shout out, Ford, Marathon Oil, both up 25% in 1 month.
Boom, baby.
Yeah, so hopefully we can keep that train moving. Obviously, we're not always going to be 5 for 5, but I mean, that was great. So
yeah,
we got the top 5 stocks for November. I think we got some good ones that we're going to bring them, but let's just talk about the market in general. How are you feeling about your sentiments as we close? I mean, we got 2 months left. So how do you feel about the market in November?
I feel great. I mean, back in April, I had mentioned that I didn't think that we were going to see a crash this year. I thought that my sentiment was really bullish, and I've kind of stuck through that this entire year. And it's good to see that the markets are hitting all-time highs. And I think that we could end up seeing a run into the end of the year. Things are looking great. Things are opening back up. People are less and less worried about COVID, which has been a huge, reason why the market has been moving up or down all year long.
Yeah.
So, I think it looks good for the rest of the year.
So we've got supply chain issues. We've got airline cancellations. We've got yields. If anything does make the market turn, right? What would you be worried about or keeping an eye on moving through the end of the year?
I think moving through the end of the year, you highlighted a lot of things, but really for me, it's inflation. How much is that sticking, and how's the Fed going to react? Some people have made the argument that the Fed has been way too slow on this, and we are seeing some inflation stick in certain areas, particularly within wages. So you can't just go back on, giving good wages. You can't just be like, oh, we're not paying you this much anymore. So that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on going into the end of this year and the beginning of next year to see how the Fed responds to that.
And as far as particular industries are concerned, are there particular industries that you're more bullish on? Maybe one or two?
Yeah, I would say the banking industry, because if the rates do go up, it's going to be the financials that probably end up leading the markets, and then housing and energy. I think those three are going to be the ones that continue to lead the way going into the beginning of next year, and maybe throughout the year. We'll have to see, but I'm sure we'll have our bold predictions video coming out towards the end of the year on that one.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's get into the top 5 stocks, guys. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and the subscribe button if you want more content like this. But Brad, go ahead, kick it off with number 1.
All right. So my first one here, and I think it's been a minute since we've talked about this stock in particular, even though we've loved it the entire time. That's been Crowdstrike. Crowdstrike actually got downgraded today by BTIG over concerns with rising competition. I think there's plenty of space for all things regarding cybersecurity right now. And to me, this seemed like a really big stretch to give a downgrade to something. Now, they didn't say that it's time to sell Crowdstrike. They downgraded it from a buy to neutral, and that really impacted the stock today specifically. But I think this is actually a good opportunity to get in on Crowdstrike for the rest of the month. Cybersecurity isn't going anywhere. It's down almost 5% today on that simple downgrade. And now, granted, it's been running pretty hot, but I think that this is actually a good opportunity to get in on it. If we take a look at the chart, you can see that it's actually testing that 50-day moving average right now. So I think from a technical standpoint, this looks like a really good opportunity to at least maybe get in on a starting position, see how it fares. If it doesn't hold that 50-day, maybe watch it again around 255. But either way, Crowdstrike's not going anywhere, and I don't care if competition is starting to work its way in. I mean, we've seen how Netflix has handled that, and I think Crowdstrike can be held in that same type of vein as far as a leader in the space is concerned. And I just think this is going to be a good one that potentially makes a nice move after this correction for the month of November.
Yeah, it does look like it's set up pretty well where this could be a good asymmetrical opportunity. Or we'll say actually earnings are November 30th. So from run into earnings potentially for November, this could set up really well, especially if the overall market is generally bullish. So you could go into that. You could, if they have a great earnings, potential upgrades and sort of shifting of sentiment sets us up really well for November. I like it.
Yeah. My next one's going to be PayPal. Now, PayPal has been one that obviously has been in the headlines recently. First, they were going to buy Pinterest. Now they're not buying Pinterest, and the stock has suffered I guess more or less of like a double whammy for PayPal, because it's been one of those things where it was going to go down because the investors thought they were paying too much for it, and then when the deal fell through, they ended up selling it even more because the deal fell through. So PayPal's had a rough go of it, but their earnings are next week. I believe November 8th is the earnings date for PayPal. And I think that they actually end up crushing it. We're obviously seeing demand in the consumer spending side of things when it comes to retail, and people are going out, restaurants, that sort of thing. So transactions are going to continue to become more and more prevalent for PayPal. We also like Square, who has earnings later this week as of this recording. And so I think that PayPal is actually primed for a nice, decent um, opportunity to get in on some of the misfortunes that we've seen from them. So we look at the chart right here, and it's actually down at a support around 230. So I think that this is actually a good spot for it. It looks like a good opportunity.
Yeah. I obviously PayPal is good from the long term. I was wondering, are you concerned at all? There's also the Department of Justice investigation on Visa and the incentives that they had given companies like Square and PayPal,
Yeah.
which came out around the same time as the Pinterest. Is that something that you're concerned about?
I think there's certainly some level of concern, but I don't know if I would be so worried to stay away from it as far as investing in it, or at least making a trade on it. I think this is a great trade setup for the short term, and I think the month of November is going to be good for PayPal. All right, so my next stock here is going to be Ford. Now, Ford came on the watch list last month for the month of October and obviously knocked it out of the park. I think that they're going to continue to make the move here, Fat Man Zoom, going into the end of the year, specifically also in November. The earnings that they came out with were actually really awesome. They had mixed numbers as far as the quarter that they were currently in, but they gave really good guidance for the full year next year, raising revenue and all that good stuff. I think that also the amount of money that they're putting in the EVs just shows how dedicated they are to making the shift. And Ford has been known to pivot like this before in the past. There's a reason they've been in business for over 100 years. And I think it's been because obviously the brand recognition and the loyalty that they have from their customers, and then also being recognizing how the markets are shifting. I think the EV side of things, the way that they're going to be investing in it through 2025, speaks volumes to them. And lots of people are really kind of looking at this as, EVs and Tesla being number one, Ford being number two. So I think that that's certainly going to come into play as well. And I think with some of the moves that we've seen in EV stocks, Ford's kind of been moving along with them as well. So I think that Ford's actually going to make some really good moves going into the end of the year.
At what point do you think Ford has to show revenue growth as far as like substantial numbers and substantial move? Because we're talking about years ahead, and it's fair to say that like really Tesla is leading this move because people see Tesla move and they think, okay, if Ford can see success based on their current infrastructure, they should be able to succeed. We've talked about with all the companies in EVs in general. At some point you do have to produce. How long before investors get weary and are like, we need some big numbers?
I think they're going to have to show something by the time by the end of next year.
Okay.
And that's just me being speculative about it. But my thoughts are we're already going to see nearly full 2 years of the Mach-E being sold. The F-150 is supposed to be out by next year. So I think that we're going to have a pretty decent sample size, especially when it comes to margins. I mean, Tesla's margins on car sales is ridiculous. So Ford has to come close to that in order for them to compete. Looking at the chart on Ford, obviously this has been an absolute monster. So I think that we take a look at this, as it stands today, as of this recording, it's November 1st. It's almost at all-time highs. I think that it stands to reason that maybe we could see this come back to retest the 1660 area, 16 and a half. But you can't make the argument that this is still very much breaking out. I've been in and out of this since earnings came out, and it's been giving me really good opportunities to buy the dips on this, because then it just continues to rip higher. So I think that this is going to be something that I would probably just watch for the potential red day that you might be able to get an opportunity to grab the dip on. My next stock here is going to be Google, Fat Man Zoom. And Google's been something that we watched have really good earnings. Some of the other fangs just really suffered over the third quarter, and largely in part due to supply chain and labor shortages, but also with Facebook and Snap and Twitter, some of the other social media platforms, they were really suffering as far as the new restrictions on Apple and how that's impacted their business. Google didn't really have that problem. Search has been absolutely monstrous for them, and they continue to deliver. AI is going to be more and more a part of their business model, and that's kind of where they're shifting towards. We've talked about Facebook moving towards Meta, and Google is really continuing to dive into the AI space. So I think that this is going to be something that continues to move, and it's still undervalued when you compare it to the rest of the fangs.
Yeah, and I mean, Google, in a sense, is competitor to Apple in that way with the Android. So um, that obviously makes sense. And I don't know, while YouTube is social, it's not the same as you talk about the Facebook and the Twitters and the Snaps, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
For Google, what do you think the greatest opportunity for Google is? Because they have autonomous driving, their version of the robo taxi through Waymo. They have obviously their existing model in YouTube. They also have their own cloud services.
Yeah.
What's the biggest upside for Google? Is it one of those, or is there something that we haven't even seen yet?
That's a great question. I think it is going to be AI, and I think you talked about Waymo and the robo taxi side of things. That could be a huge opportunity for them, and people kind of been sleeping on that. That's been something that they've had in the works and quietly developing over the last several years. Are they going to be able to hold a candle to something like Tesla robo taxis? Because we know that they're on the way too. That remains to be seen. Uber's already started to partner with Tesla in that regard, but I think that Google's definitely, there's space in it for them too.
Yeah, and when considering Waymo, don't discount it, because you think about the integration of that. If it works, the robo taxi, how seamless is that integration with all the Android users we just talked about,
Yeah.
and even iPhone users? I'm an Apple iOS person, but I use Google Maps. So integration with Maps and saying, hey, find a destination, how easily can they integrate a pickup?
Right.
So they're in a great position, because if they're able to execute, the integration is going to be really seamless. And I think that is a huge revenue opportunity.
The infrastructure is the advantage for them, especially when it comes to Tesla. Sure, Tesla's got one, but it's nothing compared to what Google has for sure.
Yeah.
We take a look at the chart on Google as well, and you can see that obviously this is also very high. It's been hitting all-time highs, but the chart actually is showing a cup and handle breakout here. I think that this is going to be a huge run into the end of the year, especially when you compare it to its other FANG counterparts that haven't made similar moves and actually been going in the opposite direction. So I like Google a lot here for the month of November and really the end of the year. The last one here, Fat Man Zoom. This may or may not come as a surprise to you, but it's Cleveland Cliffs. Cleveland Cliffs has been one that hasn't been a sexy stock on the list, but we've talked about it at length before. And just today, Senator Manchin came out. If you guys don't know, Senator Manchin has been kind of like this swing vote towards these bipartisan efforts towards the social the social bill, also the infrastructure bill, and he's been pushing for this infrastructure bill, and I think that this part of the bill is actually going to go through, and that benefits Cleveland Cliffs. Also, the G20 summit's been going on this month or this week, and there's talks of loosening up some of the tax implications on raw materials. We already saw that with aluminum, and how Harley Davidson reacted wildly to that today. Is up almost 10%. So I think that Cleveland Cliffs stands to benefit a lot. Not only that, but their earnings were incredible. They're continuing to acquire companies that help them. And I think that steel in general is going to make a massive move, and materials in general are probably going to make some pretty good moves in 2022.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a smart allocation. In general, I think the point needs to be made. We need to be considering where we're going to look as far as the infrastructure bill is concerned, as far as the outstanding catalyst, tailwinds, headwinds that we mentioned earlier. So being aware of, hey, if this plays out, this is where I'm going to be going. I think that's ever important, where we're going to see these storylines start to play out, and being prepared and knowing what you're going to get into. And Cleveland Cliffs is certainly going to be part of the story for November.
Yeah, absolutely. And we take a look at the chart, and it's been pretty organized for the most part. We've seen, this test the bottom of this channel, the top of the channel, and it's stayed really in the middle of it one way or another. So the organization here has been really good on this ascending channel, and it's still very much in the middle of it. We're coming back down to that 50-day moving average, which I think we could test after they had stellar earnings a couple weeks ago. So I think that this is actually stands to be a good opportunity if it comes back and holds this 50-day moving average. I personally am in on this on calls for next year. So I think that Cleveland Cliffs is certainly a good one, especially if we can start to see this breakout at the top of the channel.
All these are great. Those are our top 5 stocks for November. I have one more question for you. And before I give you that question, I want to just invite you guys to get our free daily watch list. So if you guys are interested in getting stocks like this, we send out 5 stocks every morning, fundamental technical analysis on what we're watching before the market opens. So if you guys are interested, go to onlychaos.com, click get a free watch list. The link is also in the description. So guys, no cost, definitely check that out. I have a question because I wanted to I was thinking about Fubo TV for November. I was thinking about Palantir, ChargePoint, all these stocks.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you about them individually. I'm going to say which stock has the greatest chance of getting the meme or the Reddit hype in November if you had to pick one?
Well, that's a great question. And that's a really tough one, too. I think that I'd have to go with ChargePoint, given the hype that we're seeing around EVs lately, especially with the Hertz, purchase from Tesla and how all the EV space has been moving. ChargePoint's actually in the middle of a breakout right now, or a reversal of its downward trend. And I think that one could certainly get some legs.
Yeah, I love that. There's certainly going to be a lot of action in November. Guys, we're excited to see you for it. Check us out every Monday through Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time right here on YouTube. Also every Sunday, Stock Watch Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll see you in the next video.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.